Now, the FBI says it never interfered in the 2020 election, but new reporting may reveal otherwise. Public Substack founder Michael Shellenberger, journalists Catherine Herridge and Alex Gutentag found that just days ahead of the election, the agency issued a gag order about the Hunter Biden laptop, effectively silencing any discussions about it. In 2024, the FBI supplied congressional investigators with a heavily redacted document containing those chats.
According to the report, an FBI official told House investigators that an agency employee accidentally confirmed the authenticity of Hunter's laptop to then Twitter. The New York Post published its bombshell story on the now infamous laptop the same day.
Joining us now to elaborate on the specifics of what they uncovered in the internal chats, the broader implication, is Michael Shellenberger, one of our favorite guests. Always nice to see you, Michael.
Great to see you, Robbie.
So tell us more about why this is such a bombshell. It looks to me like proof that the FBI knew the Hunter Biden laptop story was genuine and said nothing about it, which matters because obviously there were those 50 intelligence and former intelligence officials who came forward to say, oh, well, it looks like Russian-based disinformation to us. Well, the government could have confirmed that it was not if the FBI had already reached that conclusion. And of course, the censorship, so much of it, of that story on social media, being motivated by what they were hearing from the FBI in the first place. So it's really a scandal if the FBI knew better. In fact, that would be, I guess, a disinformation campaign of their own.
Yeah, that's right. It was a disinformation campaign. So it's important for people to keep in mind that the FBI had the Hunter Biden laptop in December of 2019. They were able to authenticate it within days or hours of receiving it. That spring, then, we start to see Aspen Institute, the Stanford Cyber Policy organization, start to basically pre-bunk or brainwash journalists and social media executives into associating Hunter Biden and Burisma with Russian disinformation. They claim that there's a coming hack and leak. Mark Zuckerberg said this to Joe Rogan in the summer of 2022. He apologized for it later. Basically, the FBI had gone to Twitter and Facebook in advance of the laptop story surfacing and said, hey, there's going to be some kind of hack and leak. It'll be about, Hunter Biden and Burisma. We now also have tied one of the people on that chats that we just reported on yesterday was the same FBI official who went and briefed Senators Grassley and Johnson, telling them that their Hunter Biden investigation was somehow being used for Russian disinformation. FBI then leaked that meeting to the media to basically spread disinformation. So you're exactly right, Robbie. What we've seen here now is the FBI was involved in a very elaborate effort to kind of program journalists and social media companies in advance of the story coming out. Of course, mistakes get made. As you mentioned, one of the FBI employees accidentally told Twitter on a conference call that the laptop was real. Twitter went ahead and censored it anyway. And I think the important thing from all this, Robbie, is not just is that censorship is very hard to achieve in a society like ours. What they're trying to do is to change the perception of it to make people think it's something that it's not, in this case, Russian disinformation.
What kind of accountability can we have for this behavior by the FBI? Now that the Trump administration controls the government, you'd think there'd be an effort to change this culture of corruption that is political. I keep having these arguments where they say, well, we don't want to politicize these agencies. I'm like, but there was a veneer of neutrality beforehand that very much served a specific political interest.
Yeah, look, I think we're all trying to give them a little bit of time at the FBI to kind of settle in. And obviously there's a lot going on. A lot of promises were made. I think we're all getting a little impatient. There is obviously a huge amount of information that hasn't been released. A lot of those documents were redacted that we reported on yesterday. A full investigation needs to occur. This was a very elaborate disinformation campaign, clearly aimed at changing the perception of the Hunter Biden laptop before it came out. It involved a huge number of people. So yeah, there's just a lot more here. And I think that obviously they've been focused on things like crime and migration and these deportations. But the weaponization of a government agency for political reasons is an extremely serious crime. And so, yeah, we're all getting a little bit impatient for it. We were glad to get this nugget, but I think there's just a lot more there that the public needs to know about.
And do we know, how Twitter received this news? Because I can't imagine from their perspective, Twitter is not a sole entity, right? It's a large number of moderators working, often in tandem, often not on the same page, and senior vice presidents or legal people. Some of the staff of Twitter, we know at the high levels, had actually come from government or even from intelligence, and maybe had a deference to those agencies that was improper. Other people were at least skeptical up to a point of the messaging they were getting from the government in terms of what are you talking about, these being Russian bots. We clearly know these are not Russian bots. I imagine when whoever was in charge at the time finds out, wait, they told us, we took this story down, but they had already told us that the story was real. I had to imagine there was probably some frustration. Do we have any knowledge of internally how that was received?
Yeah, we do. This was the second Twitter file that I did. The first one I did was on the decision to deplatform Trump. The second one I did was on the Hunter Biden laptop. It was an amazing situation. I mean, basically the head of trust and safety, the top censor in Twitter, in the early morning hours of when the New York Post story came out on October 14th, this person, Yoel Roth, said, "We don't see anything that violates any of our terms of service. There's no reason to do anything to this. It's fine." At that moment, the former FBI general counsel, who had become the Twitter deputy general counsel that summer, the previous summer, the very same time this information operation was underway, strenuously argued that it should be censored anyway. I produced all these documents. It's all online. This is all based on internal documents. Strenuously argued that it should still be censored, reversed the decision, even though there was still no information. There was just all there was FBI disinformation, claiming some sort of role for Russians. There was nothing. It was made up whole cloth. People talk about sometimes, good disinformation is based on a nugget of truth. Zero in this case, zero, and there's no connection at all. And so they reversed it inside Twitter. And again, as I was saying, it was that decision because for a lot of people, including myself at the time, you heard about the story, but you also kind of heard, oh, it sounds like there's sort of something wrong with it. It's maybe related to Russians, and so we brought that skepticism into it, but there was nothing wrong with the story. It was exactly as it appeared, but we had all been manipulated into thinking it was something that it wasn't.
And I think the result of that, as you kind of just alluded to, is like we're still talking about this story. I don't know, however many years it's years and years later now, if 4 or 5 years later. I think one of the reasons we're still talking about it is because of the dramatic efforts to censor it that appeared. I think it backfired totally, their desire to keep this out of the public commentary space. I think they Streisand affected this one 10,000 times over in terms of how much attention it ended up getting, which is maybe just an ideological lesson to people out there who want to engage in censorship.
Yeah, I mean, one small point on that, Robbie, and this is a very good point. The Streisand effect is very real in all of the censorship. When you read all the documents by the people that were engaged in censorship and advocating more censorship, they're very aware of that. And so where they were headed, Robbie, was two big areas. They were looking to censor whole narratives, not just individual posts, because they understand that people think in stories. But then they were trying to really focus on de-amplification, meaning they wouldn't actually, you would still be able to see it, but it just wouldn't go viral. That was where like the sort of the state of the art by the time it all blew open in the spring of 2022 with the Disinformation Governance Board at DHS, and then that December with the Twitter files. Where they were at was a level of sophistication that is quite jaw-dropping. I mean, it's so sophisticated. They were out there to basically control the information environment. They call them information operations, but they were looking to basically work with the social media companies on a constant basis to de-amplify narratives that they didn't like. So they weren't even, we were far beyond just fact-checking or incitement to. I mean, we're so far beyond that. They're trying to change whole narratives by de-amplifying posts. I mean, it's Orwell couldn't have imagined it being that sophisticated. This is a level of subtlety and precision censorship that I think people don't associate, with that word.
You know, Mike. Michael, if your goal is to make sure that censorship and any kind of manipulation of narrative is exposed, and I totally honor that. And if your story is, I have no reason to believe it's not true, good on you. I just hope that we will have the same kind of vigorous oversight of Kash Patel at the FBI, anything they do. I also think that even if that story was not Russian disinformation, as you say, that doesn't mean there wasn't Russian disinformation. It doesn't continue to be. And from our side of the aisle, there's no censorship. We've never seen censorship like this anti-DEI thing. Telling museums, telling cultural institutions, telling educational institutions what they can talk about, what they can't talk about, words themselves that are taken out of documents. So I just hope that same level of vigor and vigorous oversight that you've exercised here will continue.
We would love
thank you for your work.
We would love to get into that more, but we unfortunately have to go right now. Michael Shellenberger, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Next up, a district court judge sides with Doge. We'll tell you more. Stay tuned.